Schwerer Gustav was a German 80 cm railway gun. It was developed in the late 1930s by Krupp in Rügenwalde as siege artillery for the explicit purpose of destroying the main forts of the French Maginot Line, the strongest fortifications in existence at the time. The fully assembled gun weighed nearly 1,350 tons, 1,490 short tons, and could fire shells weighing 77 short tons to a range of 47 kilometers 29 mi. The gun was designed in preparation for the Battle of France, but was not ready for action when that battle began and the Wehrmacht offensive through Belgium rapidly outflanked and isolated the Maginot Line, which was then besieged with more conventional heavy guns until French capitulation. Gustav was later deployed in the Soviet Union during the Battle of Sevastopol, part of Operation Barbarossa, where, among other things, it destroyed a munition depot located roughly 30 meters 98 feet below sea level. The gun was moved to Leningrad and may have been intended to be used in the Warsaw Uprising like other German heavy siege pieces, but the uprising was crushed before it could be prepared to fire. Gustav was destroyed by the Germans near the end of the war in 1945 to avoid capture by the Soviet Red Army. Schwerer Gustav was the largest caliber rifled weapon ever used in combat, and in terms of weight, the heaviest mobile artillery piece ever built. It fired the heaviest shells of any artillery piece. It was surpassed in caliber only by the British Mallets mortar and the American Little David Bomb testing mortar, both at 36 inches 91.5 cm, but was the only one of the three to go into action. In 1934, the German Army High Command commissioned Krupp of Essen to design a gun to destroy the forts of the French Maginot Line that were nearing completion. The gun's shells had to punch through 7 meters of reinforced concrete or 1 full meter of steel armor plate from beyond the range of French artillery. Krupp engineer Erich M. Leinzer calculated that the task would require a weapon with a caliber of around 80 centimeters, firing a projectile weighing 7 tons from a barrel 30 meters long. The weapon would have a weight of over 1,000 tons. The size and weight meant that to be at all movable it would need to be supported on twin sets of railway tracks. The railway tracks were specifically engineered to accommodate the immense weight and size of Schwerer Gustav. Constructed with reinforced steel, these tracks provided a stable foundation for the weapon's movement. Specialized locomotives and cranes were employed to transport and position the gun with precision. In common with smaller railway guns, the only barrel movement on the mount itself would be elevation, traverse being managed by moving the weapon along a curved section of railway line. Krupp prepared plans for calibers of 70 centimeters, 80 centimeters, 85 centimeters, and 1 meter. Nothing further happened until March 1936, when, during a visit to Essen, Adolf Hitler inquired as to the giant gun's feasibility. No definite commitment was given by Hitler, but design work began on an 80 centimeters model. The resulting plans were completed in early 1937 and approved. Fabrication of the first gun started in mid-1937. Technical complications in the forging of such massive pieces of steel made it apparent that the original completion date of early 1940 could not be met. Krupp built a test model in late 1939 and sent it to the Hillersleben proving ground for testing. Penetration was tested on this occasion, firing at high elevation. The 710 kilogram shell was able to penetrate the specified 7 meters of concrete and the 1 meter armor plate. When the tests were completed in mid-1940, the complex carriage was further developed. Alfred Krupp, after whose father the gun was named, personally hosted Hitler at the Rügenwalde, now Darowo, Poland proving ground during the formal acceptance trials of the Gustav gun in early 1941. 2 guns were ordered. The first round was test-fired from the commissioned gun barrel on September 10, 1941 from a makeshift gun carriage at Hillersleben. In November 1941, the barrel was taken to Rügenwalde, where 8 further firing tests were carried out using the 7,100 kilogram armor-piercing shell out to a range of 37,000 to 110 meters. In combat, the gun was mounted on a specially designed chassis, supported by 8 bogies on 2 parallel railway tracks. Each of the bogies had 5 axles, giving a total of 40 axles. Krupp named the gun Schwerer Gustav after the senior director of the firm, Gustav Krupp von Bohlen in die Halbach. The gun could fire a heavy concrete-piercing shell and a lighter high-explosive shell. An extremely long-range rocket projectile was also planned with a range of 150 kilometers that would require the barrel being extended to 84 meters. In keeping with the tradition of the Krupp Company, no payment was asked for the first gun. They charged 7 million Reichsmark for the second gun, Dora, named after the senior engineer's wife. In February 1942, Heavy Artillery Unit E672 reorganized and went on the march, and Schwerer Gustav began its long ride to Crimea. The train carrying the gun was of 25 cars, a total length of 1.5 kilometers 09 mi. The gun reached the Perikop Isthmus in early March 1942, where it was held until early April. The Germans built a special railway spur line to the Simferopol-Sevastopol Railway 16 kilometers 9 mi north of the target. At the end of the spur, they built 4 semicircular tracks, specially for the Gustav to traverse. Outer tracks were required for the cranes that assembled Gustav. The siege of Sevastopol was the gun's first combat test. 4,000 men and 5 weeks were needed to get the gun into firing position. 500 men were needed to fire it. Installation began in early May, and by 5 June, the gun was ready to fire. The following targets were engaged. 5 Junico Astor guns at a range of 25,000 meters. 8 shells fired. Fort Stalin. 6 shells fired. 6 June for Molotov. 7 shells fired. White Cliff, also known as Ammunition Mountain, an undersea ammunition magazine in Severnaya, Northern Bay. The magazine was sited 30 meters under the sea with at least 10 meters of concrete protection. After 9 shells were fired, the magazine was ruined and one of the boats in the bay sunk. 7 June firing in support of an infantry attack on Est-Westspitze, an outlying fortification. 7 shells fired. 11 June for Siberia, knocked out of action. 5 shells fired. 17 June Maxim Gorky fortress is bombarded. 5 shells fired. By the end of the siege on 4 July, the city of Sevastopol lay in ruins, and 30,000 tons of artillery ammunition had been fired. Gustav had fired 47 rounds and worn out its original barrel, which had already fired around 250 rounds during testing and development. The gun was fitted with the spare barrel, and the original was sent back to Krupp's factory in Essen for relining. The gun was then dismantled and moved to the northern part of the Eastern Front, where an attack was planned on Leningrad. The gun was placed 30 kilometers 6 mi from the city near the railway station of Tatze. The gun was fully operational when the attack was cancelled. The gun then spent the winter of 1940 to 43 near Leningrad.